Hello folks, and welcome to a quick guide on understanding early game team compositions and how to kind of think about it here. Okay, so first and foremost, let me get one thing out there right away. Forget the whole XYZ thing is powerful or weak thing. That does not apply here. Basically, when it comes to any kind of power structure to anything else, it is going to be entirely what you make it. You can make pretty much anything powerful, you can make any powerful thing suck. It's just a matter of how you use things. Every unit is just a tool. That's how you should see them. Okay, so let's talk team composition. There's going to be no perfect team composition, but you can kind of generally get an idea for what kind of things you should be focusing on looking at your list right here. What is everybody good at, specifically? So for example, let's look at the basics here. Warriors are generally speaking going to be adaptable to a lot of situations. They can use heavy weapons, they can use light and ranged weapons at the same time. They can use wide varieties of armor, and they've got abilities to push units around. So if you're looking for somebody that's good at pushing lines and spacing, that's going to be your warrior. Archers are going to be a defense exploitation class. Ranged weapons scale phenomenally higher than melee weapons, but you need a way to exploit their weaknesses, meaning that for the case of archers right there, you generally want to keep a variety of different kinds of archers on hand. Personally, I like to get archers weak and simply hire new ones to the team. You have recruit available on your rune fencers, your knights, as well as your priests. Generally speaking, you're going to have somebody around on hand that can use recruit. Generally speaking, always be recruiting. There's going to be cases like this guy right here, where you can simply recruit people outside of your level range. Always be recruiting. It will give you constant advantages, it'll give you constant new equipment, it'll help out your money problems, it'll help out your people problems. Generally speaking, it'll give you more tools to play with. So, again, always be recruiting. But when it comes to archers, you want to keep a wide variety on hand. And if you see an elemental weakness, you see a type of unit that you want to bully from far away, switch to the opposite element archer. If you need more charms, go into Farampa Wildwood, kill anything that's got tiny wings on it, and it'll give you more charms. You should have a functionally infinite amount of charms once you get into Chapter 2. And if you didn't know how to get access to the Farampa Wildwood to begin with, you simply go to Warren Report. You go down to the talk section, and you find out the Farampa Wildwood is open to hunting. At that point, go ahead and hunt things. Again, all fairies and gremlins have a chance to drop a wide variety of different charms in there. Don't bother charioting, just go ahead and just go completely nuts on that mess. Anyway, so let's move on here. What are other classes good at here? So we got your enchantresses and your wizards. These are primarily going to be your casters. Don't only focus on damage. Keep stuff like for example, Poison Cloud or Paralytic Wave on hand. The way you want to set up your casters is you want to have, typically speaking, again, everyone's situation is going to be different. Personally, the way I like to do it, 1 missile attack, 1 overhead, 2 debuffs. Generally speaking, 1 AoE debuff, 1 more specific debuff. So for example, something like Poison Cloud, fantastic overall damage situation. If you don't have a specific target that you're targeting, spam poison. It'll save on MP, it'll do more damage than any specific spell, it'll do more damage over time. Even if you use just concentration, your odds to hit will bottom out at 30%. You wait for a spell strike to trigger, you get your concentration going, you get your poison going, you just spam it. It will do more damage than any damage spell you have available. If you're targeting something down, use your missile abilities or your overheads if you're unable to reach them. Missiles will always do more than overheads. Basically, the name should be fairly obvious. Missiles, shoot straight, overheads, shoot from the sky. Everyone's got access to those. Moving on. When it comes to the clerics, generally speaking, early game, I recommend just putting these on AI. Don't think about it. They'll always target the unit with the lowest health, and it'll give you a better general idea to kind of mentally always keep in mind to pull back your front lines. I know this seems like you're giving up some control, but you constantly want to be rotating your front lines in order to make sure to keep your weak units back, your strong units forward. You don't always want to min-max for one particular thing. For example, turning the entire party into berserkers would objectively give you the highest potential damage number, and it will completely ruin your entire team, because they can't all be hitting at once, they need to get close, and also they're going to be getting in each other's way. So usually you want to have a mix of different kinds of units to make sure that they all can cooperate properly. So again, let's continue going on to roles. Valkyries and Rune Fencers. These are going to be a very generalized unit that can do a lot of things. They can heal, they can hit, they can shoot, and they can additionally also protect themselves using instills. Bear in mind, instills also give you a shield versus that exact element. So, for example, if you have a Water Valkyrie, give them Instill Lightning, and suddenly that will cover a huge part of their weakness to lightning. This is one of your most generally useful units. You should always keep something like Valkyries or Rune Fencers on hand, again just due to the number of different roles that they can serve. They're not going to be your primary front line, but I usually recommend having at least 2 of them because they can adapt. Do you need some archers on the fly? Combine that Instill Shield combined with the ability that it gives additional damage when shooting to have them exploit weaknesses. Have them use missile abilities to shoot stuff from afar. Boon of Swiftness to make people go faster. Heavy armor to make them more defensive. Generally speaking, they can do everything, but don't try to make them do everything at once. They are there as support more than anything else. Knights are going to be your main frontline wall. They are there to simply defend. They are there to deny movement. Rampart Aura is going to cause somebody to stop when they are nearby them. This means that when you are creating a line of units, you can make sure that they stop in a particular spot. Only things that are able to fly can actually get past this wall. Even if something has the ability to teleport, it still has to respect the Rampart Aura and stop nearby this unit. It maxes out at 2 tiles away, but still a couple of knights should generally be considered in order to have a solid front line. Personally, my role is just having 2 of every class and just kind of adapting accordingly. Terror Knights are your primary can opener, as well as ranged support, as odd as that sounds. So can opener, because if you give them, for example, a breach or a breach weapon like a Zwei or a Claymore that is crafted, they're going to be inflicting fear and breach at the same time, meaning that, for example, if you were to hit anything with that, they would synergize very well with the archer, who ends up scaling higher due to lower defenses, essentially meaning that they can mark something for instant death, give or take. Additionally, if they've got nothing better to do, they've got a variety of debuffs, as well as concentration, as well as the ability to steal health. Generally speaking, you don't want to leave them in a position where they're vulnerable to attacks, but they're there to essentially push the line more so than hold it. Knights hold, Terror Knights push, and then if you need spacing, you have Warriors. Berserkers are there to do big damage, though they're usually better off on the flanks. They can be a danger to themselves and others if they're berserking in the front lines. Always bear in mind that if you're using Berserk, it is improving your damage next to Sanguine Assault, so you can essentially stack both of those on top of another to start getting that like one-shot level damage with these guys. Again, generally speaking, it's better to have them envelop from the sides because their big wide swings on their Berserk attacks will spread damage around very effectively, but you don't want to be hitting your own guys with that. So if you want to, for example, use them in the middle, it is recommended to stick with a one-handed plus a shield build, because the shield will not cause the Berserk to trigger, meaning that they can just push a unit back instead of bothering for this. Now, you may be asking, why exactly would we bother with something like Warriors when all the other units can use shields for guaranteed knockback? Well, because they can essentially do that knockback, but they can do it stronger while still having the ability to counter. Either way, all of these are going to be a bit more situational. Many of these other classes will do their own little things here or there, but those are the basics. These guys should, for the most part, be the core of your early game team. Once we get into other more specific things, you know, like Sword Masters, which are a 1v1 specialist, Dragoons, which are an anti-beast specialist, Ninjas, which are more for the purposes of kind of singling out targets and going for more tricky builds, you know, Beast Tamers for causing beasts to join your side, as well as boosting your own. There's a lot of different classes, and there's no possible way to do them all in one video in under, 3 hours or less. But generally speaking, that's what you need to keep in mind. For your team comp, keep in mind who might potentially be in your way and who might be potentially getting in each other's way. Do not focus on just defense. Focus on cohesion more than anything else. So, for example, we're going to go over here to Brigantes here, and we're going to go ahead and see what we're looking at. So we're going to go ahead and scout it out, and what are we looking at? Well, we look out and we see that they've got archers up top, meaning that if there are archers, generally speaking, you want to deploy less squishies. Archers exploit squishies and anybody with those particular defense types. I know it seems like I go on about archers, but they do scale phenomenally better than many other units, and additionally, if they end up multiplying their damage through their various skills, it can be dangerous. So right here, there's an earth archer, there's what looks like an ice archer. It's a little hard to tell with the smaller screen right now sometimes. So we want to be avoiding anything that is either air or lightning that's squishy, as well as looks like another archer right over here. So basically ice and air squishies are not air, I'm sorry. Ice and lightning squishies are going to be very problematic here. We've got mages over here. Those are going to be very consistent damage against a lot of things. And then up here, we've probably got 3 more archers. That guy is going to be a healer. The healers are always going to be showing up as white. The other guys here are probably, there we go, archers. So these guys are looking like ice. Are they both ice, or this guy's looking like water? So if there's one unit by itself, it's not necessarily going to be countering that much, but either way, we know what we need to defend against, and then we know that the front line that we want to break through is consisting of 1 Terror Knight, 1 Knight, and 1 Berserker. Looks like it's going to be a mix of ice and water. So let's go ahead and consider our team comp accordingly. In order to break through that line, we're going to want something that's going to be relatively fast. Let's go ahead and break some stuff down here. This was a no-shop run, by the way, in terms of why this team might look a little bit weird, so just ignore that. I like challenge runs, so it is. Anyway, so as far as physical attackers, exploiting strengths is going to be a deal. It's not necessarily going to be the biggest deal in the world, but it is important to pay attention to. So we're going to want some lightning. We're probably going to want some fire, ideally. One to cover those weaknesses is going to be enough. So we've got a lightning tank over here. We've got a heavy hitter with ice. He's just going to be neutral. And we've got barricade. These guys, while they're not the biggest push in the world, they're generally going to be enough to push through. Now we need something to go deal with those squishies in the back. So let's see what we've got on hand. We know that they're going to have ice, so we probably could deploy this Griffin, but at the same time, we want this Griffin to be stronger against them. So let's go ahead and take a look at our charms right here, and we see that we can make him a Fire Griffin. So we'll go ahead and switch him out there. So now Mr. Rybald the Griffin's going to go harass all of those squishies back there. Because they don't have any water archers aside from the 1 crossbow guy. Please bear in mind, again, you don't have to min-max this hard. This is just kind of for the sake of example. Additionally, we know that they've got some casters around there, so I think I want to go ahead and boost them up with this guy right here. We've got our whip kind of beast tamer guy. And additionally, I want somebody to do some delaying actions in the middle, so we've got Expired Chicken, the Rune Fencer over here, who's going to be flying down the center. Now, something to bear in mind is that zombie units, if you want a zombie Hawkman, you can actually just go into Farampa, go into the place called the Feral Coast, and there's zombie versions of a few different kinds of units that you can simply recruit using normal skills. So for example, a zombie Hawkman is still counted as human for whatever reason. At any rate, so we're going to have him go do delaying actions, as well as once again using recruit in order to make sure that we can maybe get some of them on our side. So, now we've got the front line moving on this way. We've got a way to harass these squishies so that they're not causing as much problems for us, as well as delaying their healing. Delaying healing doesn't sound like something that's going to matter that much, but it's something to pay attention to. Oftentimes, if you have a unit that you can regularly bully, that you can get to low health, you can use that to make sure that the healers are distracted and not healing your actual target that you want to be taking advantage of. Okay. So now we have kind of our core team right here. We've still got 6 more slots to potentially work with, but we've got a good core going. So next up, we see that we've got this Ice Wizard here. We can probably bully him with our Griffin as well, but additionally, we're going to want some additional support. So we want the front line to be supported. We're going to go ahead and use this guy over here to help boost our front line. He's basically just an AoE healer. He's not necessarily going to be, helping out too much. But he'll do the job well enough. He'll go ahead and support. They don't have any wind archers, so I'm not too worried about him getting too bullied here. Additionally, I want to have somebody attacking from the side. I want to have a flanker doing more kind of debuff type actions, so I'm going to put in a ninja. So this ninja over here, again, no shop run. I would recommend having something like Envenom or Silence, but in his particular case, he's going to be spreading stun. So, in his case, he's going to be staying right on the peripheries there, using stun with 2 very lightweight weapons in order to just spread the debuff around. It's nothing too serious, but it'll be enough to cause a distraction. So this will further help this front line have a bit more time to push through the center. Now on top of this, we want to make sure that we have some additional healing on hand, so we'll go ahead and put Hattie Man, our cleric, up front, running a staff and Caldia for additional range and additional defense, as well as a circlet. Always bear in mind that circlets are very good at kind of maintaining a lot of different defense types. And on top of that, because we've got additional slots, we're now going to throw in more Rune Fencers, because Rune Fencers are just great. So when it comes to Rune Fencers, they're usually going to be filling the most roles. Again, if you have free slots, fill them with Valkyries and Rune Fencers. They can just do everything. They can recruit, they can attack, they can cast, they can boost. They can't do everything at once, but they can do just enough to be a threat under all circumstances. So we've got that there, and then just kind of for the hell of it, we're going to go ahead and throw our Zombie Octopus in here, just because it's funny. So we'll go ahead and move on here and see how this team ends up performing. Now, I know this is kind of getting on in the game. This isn't, this is early Chapter 3. How is this early game? Well, considering that in order to actually fully complete the game, it's about several hundred hours, this is fairly early. Alright, so things to consider with this team comp here now is that we can have this guy running forward. We can immediately start harassing. How much we harass doesn't matter. They need to be distracted. They need to have something annoying them. We want to use some units, like right here we have a guy with high health, relatively low defense, and the ability to come back to life. He's going to go ahead and just kind of stick around the center there, hopefully drawing some fire. We're going to have the ninja circling around the side, attempting to once again just bully more units. In cases like this, like in most cases where it's a flat map, I would recommend deploying some casters, throwing out some debuffs, maybe some long-range poison or something like that, in order to kind of burn down health while everybody else is doing their job. It's kind of a timing issue, because in a lot of cases, you're going to have your front lines meet, and then you're going to kind of have everybody else supporting them. So ranged units very heavily counter casters, so we're going to go ahead and not deploy them in this particular situation. We're also additionally going to be using this wall for some cover, because again, he is going to be fairly weak against those longbows up there, so we want to use that wall to deny line of sight to those bows to make sure that they're not as much of a problem. Additionally, I believe Canopus is actually dead in this particular save file, so we're not going to be worrying about him. But as a friend of mine said recently, you can also see stuff like flying monster units as a way to deal free damage to archers whenever you run into them. As you can see, this Griffin has gone ahead, he has bullied these units up here, and he's gone ahead and done damage to all of them at the same time. So, this frees up our front line to move forward unharassed. This allows our fencers to kind of support the lines as they will. They're just going to kind of take fast actions. As always, bear in mind that you will essentially be paying the cost for every tile that's moved, so it is worth considering taking some shorter actions every now and then in order to make sure that you can continue taking faster actions later, maybe be able to react to certain situations faster, all of that. Something else to consider is that a lot of abilities that function in an AoE will not actually check height. So for example, I can continue using something like Empower Beast on this Griffin up here by keeping this Beast Tamer down below the wall in a safe position. This is additionally going to be good at keeping him safe because he doesn't really have any other way to proceed forward and help out. Either way, we see that they're kind of redirecting some of their front line over to deal with that Griffin now, because they're not really sure what else to do with this situation. They don't feel like going and blocking those stairs. That knight's going to take care of that. But this will give us a lot more control. So you should generally be focusing on keeping more control than specifically damage. Obviously, damage is always going to be that big, hey, look, it's a sexy number kind of situation. But really, control and being able to kind of project the best of your units is going to give you a lot more return in the long run than anything along the lines of one big hit. So like right here, he's technically speaking leaving himself out in the open a little bit. I believe that was, what was that, a steel stance? So he did have a steel stance triggering, meaning that he's going to be doing better versus these archers. When you have a ninja with steel stance, they're going to be better able to resist their arrows, so it's safe to move them into arrow range for at least a turn or two. But right here, even though he's doing 1 damage because he's got a disadvantage in that particular elemental matchup, he will fire that one in order to inflict stun, in order to make sure that unit hopefully can't move sometime later. Stun, again, is one of those things that doesn't seem very, sexy, so to speak, but it is something that will cause units to waste their turns, allowing you a lot more freedom of movement as time goes on. Again, the ability to react to things and kind of freely adapt your strategy is going to matter a lot more than having one guy being able to hit real hard. So like right here, again, they will continue wasting all of their attack potential on a unit that simply does not care. So we'll now proceed to more or less have free reign on a lot of the rest of these guys. The fencers are going to switch over to a sort of casting strategy here, just kind of pelting at stuff wherever it's available. Not really worrying about getting those optimal damage numbers, we're just kind of getting some damage on our way up to the targets here. He's going to go ahead and empower, and he's going to go ahead and stand still. If needed, he's got some items that he can throw around to the rest of the team, but he's here as support, he's here to make sure that that Griffin can hit real hard. This guy, on the other hand, is going to bother trying to make some friends. And additionally, a fun little note is that you can use this to kind of fly around and push people off of walls. So, for example, if this knight were to go ahead and target him, like for example, if you were to fly to this tile right here, he could simply push this guy off the wall, we could surround him, and then suddenly we'd have free reigns of these tiles over here. So bear in mind, spacing is fairly important, but we want to keep this slow Terror Knight out of the fight as long as possible, so we're just going to take some free damage with our shield, push him backwards, and look for opportunities to recruit new friends to our side. Again, this is the fun of a no-shop run, that we're kind of just adapting things on the fly and, dealing with a kind of lowest common denominator kind of situation. Additionally, another nice benefit of having Fencers and Valkyries on your team is being able to spend their time to boost other units up, so they're going to go ahead and get that Knight going a little bit faster. Knights are very, very defensive, but they're not exactly the fastest dudes in the world, so we're going to get that going fast right there. Again, using our 2 distraction units to functionally hold 6 of their units hostage, as they're sitting there trying to, in vain, defend themselves while completely ignoring trying to get into position to take on our squishier units, like that cleric up there. And he's gone ahead and terrified the zombie. Well, I mean, I'm not sure what we'll possibly do about that. Anyway, so we'll go ahead and keep moving on forward. Again, if you're using something like a Swordmaster, this is probably the worst possible scenario for them to be in, because they are effectively a squishy that has no real way to defend themselves outside of a 1v1 scenario. But honestly, it's perfectly fine. Okay, so we will now continue bullying these units. We can do some okay numbers. Again, while obviously this isn't going to be a one-shot by any means, this is enough to kind of keep some pressure on, enough to keep pushing them backwards. Beast units have a much higher chance of actually knocking enemy units back with their boulders, so that is something worth considering. So we'll continue kind of pressuring from all sides here. Again, you don't have to kill a unit to specifically take over pressure. We're kind of getting ourselves into better positions here. So far so good. We have more or less maintained control over this map. And additionally, I'm not worried about healing. We're going to have, we're pretty much just going to use this guy to continue supporting this Griffin up here. I'm over healing a little bit here just to make sure that he's topped off, just to be safe. We'll continue, he's triggered Steel Stance a second time, so we will continue pressing our advantage here a little bit. If he can potentially get a shot off on this Terror Knight, that would be ideal. I would like to actually, instead of taking a shot right now, I'd like to actually pick up this skill card right here, just to make sure that he's going to continue triggering Steel Stance, so we'll go ahead and do that. Once he ends up getting a little bit closer, we can probably start spamming some of those ninja summons of his. Anyway, we'll go ahead and support the team here through a little bit of a convenient harvest stance. Swordmasters are great for these kind of line-pushing endeavors, though it is worth keeping in mind that if an archer ever targets them with a weakness, they're more or less going to get hard countered right then and there. Either way, right now we are just going to be pushing through, just due to the fact that they've got 2 different opposing elements, like with ice and water here. It's going to be harder to land our effective elements on their front line, so we're just going to go ahead and take what we can get, and take that position instead of taking an optimal attack. Realistically, that Knight's probably just going to hold right there. We don't really have anyone aside from that Knight down here to fully take advantage of that, but this is still perfectly fine. We'll go ahead and move on forward, have him pick up a crit card here, which feels so unnatural with the Nothing Burger challenge. Oh, it's so weird to second guess whether or not you should pick up a card at all times. Alright, anyway, as you can see, once again, the majority of their team is distracted, giving us complete free reign over here. We'll actually go ahead and have her move back here and start pelting away at whoever she realistically can. We're just trying to get their numbers down through one means or another. It's actually, while it is usually good to take a kill whenever you can, it is worth noting that just spreading damage around does generally soften up the team a lot more, because they can't drop their healing where it's needed. So if you want to, for example, keep one unit down in particular, you can always just make sure to continue bullying everybody in order to make sure that they can't really get their optimal scenario, so to speak. Okay, so right here, we have the opportunity to potentially stun 2 of them, so we'll go ahead and go for that right there. We've stunned 1, but we've damaged 2. And again, we'll just continue staying up front here. This guy up here is actually looking a little bit worse for wear. I don't believe any of their casters are going to have Exorcism on hand at this point, so this zombie is perfectly safe to go ahead and proceed on forward, seeing as they shouldn't have any way to fully eliminate him in the long run. So we'll go ahead and take a swing against this guy, get his health down a little bit lower, and roll that chance for a recruit right here. It's only 10%, but hey, it's not 0. So what he's going to do is he's essentially going to keep attempting to bring friends to his side every time that he moves. Again, low percentage chances work a hell of a lot better when you're using them repeatedly, meaning that he's in absolutely no danger being a zombie right there. And he can just keep attempting these 10% chances to recruit somebody. It's more or less free friends at this point, so we might as well. Alright, next step, we'll just continue casting on all of these guys right here. Whether there's an advantage or not is kind of irrelevant. They're really just doing damage wherever they can. Once this guy ends up triggering both Aqua Veil and his Poison Rain at the same time, then he'll be able to throw a bigger hit out there. But for the time being, he can just sit and be a sponge for damage. We will then also, once again, continue proceeding down the left. As you can see, we've more or less maintained complete control over the situation. And again, like, I can't reiterate enough that control is going to be a big part of what you want to be going for here. Now, in this case, we have somebody that's able to exploit a weakness. That we've got this Wind Ninja, we've got him with Wind Dervish, we've got a multi-hit move, essentially, and we're able to take advantage of the fact that they're stunned, meaning that it's probably safe for him to go ahead and attack, and take advantage of that weakness over there. So this guy will continue sitting and just kind of taking no action whatsoever in order to make his next turn come up sooner, in order to hopefully end up triggering that boost to make his Griffin do a bit more damage. But for the time being, we've now seen an opening right here, and we can go ahead and exploit the fire on this finisher in order to hit the ice unit over here, essentially just melting the ice. Despite the fact that he is an ice unit himself, he will temporarily switch to fire for the purposes of that finisher. Yes, mechanically that's not the entire story, but generally speaking that's kind of how it's working. So we'll go ahead and do that there. Additionally, finishers have a larger vertical forgiveness. As I mentioned earlier, it's always worth recruiting whoever you can, and in this case, I've recruited a guy that's above our level cap in order to have access to Vile Wound, so he will then be able to target that guy up there. Now, it isn't infinite, but this does give us the opportunity to potentially do a lot more in certain situations. It does unlock some opportunities to kind of exploit the system, so to speak. Now, in this particular case, we've got our kind of pick of targets here, but we'll go ahead and bully this caster over here a little bit more, and we'll go ahead and continue pressing on forward. We'll go ahead and use our Harvest Dance to boost everybody up a little bit here, and additionally, because Harvest Dance is considered more of a weird form of healing, it actually heals zombies as well, so it's something to consider because they normally are unable to heal. The one downside of using zombies for things is that, yes, they can heal and hurt your guys at the same time, but again, everything is going to have a downside. So at this point, we'll just wait a couple turns for that guy to come on back. We'll see who we've got available targets for. This guy is clearly a liar, because he says he's a Griffin, but clearly he's a Hawkman. But we'll go ahead and slap him with a water bubble right there and proceed on forward. Alright. So they will continue attempting to deal with all of these guys in different situations, but as you can see, we're once again still maintaining this whole situation here, and we're getting one step closer to breaking through their front line and getting to that nice squishy leader right behind them. Now, something to note is that when it comes to later units, in many cases, if you attempt to rush them down, they will immediately start rushing units forward and attempt to block off your path as much as possible, as well as hiding that unit as much as possible. They will attempt to keep their leader units out of line of sight as much as they reasonably can. So it's definitely worth considering to just kind of leave them alone until you know for certain that there's a reasonable action that you can take. Okay, so in this case, we now have an opportunity to go ahead and break this one down right here. So we'll go ahead and break through that front line. It doesn't look like they've got any frontliners coming in anytime soon, and we should be able to charge our knight in forward right here. Additionally, because they are on a flat surface, we can now use the shield to bash them forward and push through their line and hopefully chuck these guys off the wall. So what we're trying to do here, again, is not overpower them. We're trying to push our way through and press our advantages here to not have to deal with as many of their units as possible. Now, because of the fact that this guy is currently getting a little bit low on health, it is worth considering maybe moving this one forward. But seeing as they're out of range, we're just going to go ahead and have him use a finisher here instead. So he's going to use the weirdness of finisher height to go ahead and target this guy around the corner. Don't question it, it just kind of works. Now, this ninja over here has not been targeted this whole time because, again, he's just simply triggering Steel Stance over and over. Steel Stance kind of functions as a sort of stealth move in a way. So we'll now go ahead and exploit this guy's weakness over here, or I guess we could go for this caster instead, take our stun effect on her, and they're going to, once again, continue wasting turns on pretty much whatever. So, we're going to go ahead and step away kind of in this direction. This should still roughly leave us within range of doing some other things, but he's already gotten his Empower triggered, so we'll go ahead and drop a few bodies right here with the Griffin, and there we go. So now we'll go ahead and top off, we'll probably go ahead and actually leave the Griffin for a moment, go ahead and top off the Swordmaster over there. He's trying his best, but realistically, he's not a doctor. So he'll go ahead and take a little bit of healing right here, and he'll attempt to heal up the rest of the squad, while everybody else continues to push forward. Now, unfortunately, they managed to get their other knight through, which is not ideal, but whatever, we'll make it work. I was hoping the barricade would be able to push us way through, but this simply means that we need to continue pressing forward. Alright, so we'll continue throwing rocks at this guy. He's probably going to be pretty easy to smush soon enough. We could theoretically push a team around the right side, but that would take us an exorbitantly long time, and we want to try to press forward as much as possible. We want to try to, again, press all of our advantages, and currently our advantages lie in the fact that we've got basically a lot of space to work with. We've got a lot of units that can support each other particularly well, and we've got a lot of recovery. Now, that being said, we could go and invest in some better healing. We could invest in some better damage. We could invest in some trickier units, but as it stands, the overall unit is able to sustain itself pretty darn well. We additionally also kind of have a spy in the backfield through that zombie Hawkman that whenever he decides to come back to life, he's going to immediately be able to pressure some dudes. So we've essentially got map control. Again, I personally prefer squads that are able to maintain map control over many other things. Damage is damage, but there's certain factors that just matter quite a bit more in my book. But anyway, so now we have an opportunity where we've got this caster right here, who's generally been doing pretty solid damage, but we'll go ahead and pick up a crit card on him just in case he wants to make some big meaty hits later. You don't want to be focusing on collecting every card that you see. Those cards are going to be a bit more, situational. Usually, general rule of thumb is that you don't want to take more than you usually don't want to take more than one action to go pick up a card. Basically, if they're there, go ahead and do it. But if you have to take more than one action to get a card, it will usually not be worth it. Alright, now in this particular case, despite the fact that this is an ice finisher, she is a lightning element herself, so she will be proceeding on forward and attempting to exploit her lightning strength versus this guy's water, essentially taking that nice little bonus to give him a little bit of an extra hit. But due to the fact that we now want to press forward, we could have the option of pulling this Griffin over here and attempting to knock this guy off the wall. If successful, this would be very useful in kind of pushing our entire unit forward. So this is a risk worth taking. Is it going to knock him forward and knock him backward? Well, it didn't, but this is fine. We're still going to be able to push with our other squads as well. Okay, so now if we look at this, as we mentioned earlier, casters are generally going to be your consistent damage, so what we can do right here is we can use the cover of these trees to ambush this one right here. Despite the fact that he's got an elemental weakness, he's going to be hitting quite a few times with these spells here, but magic generally doesn't suffer as much from elemental weaknesses as many other damage types do. So when it comes to something like that ambush right there, he can use the trees to cover himself. He can use the spells to do a lot of damage very quickly. It doesn't have a high maximum damage, but they do pretty well when they're spammed multiple times. This is why summon type abilities are very strong. And he'll then essentially use that to try to kill off that archer back there. Additionally, we have now gotten what we were waiting for on this octopus, so we're going to go ahead and use this to attempt to cause some more chaos over here in the backfield a little bit. I'm not worried about hitting this griffin terribly hard. This would potentially allow us to break through several units at once. It's worth considering taking some friendly fire damage to do this, but instead we're going to spread some poison over here, ideally. The poison didn't roll on any of them, but it did do a pretty solid number in terms of damage. Once again, we're going to keep everybody in a vague circle here around the Swordmaster to continue this trickle heal for the entire party. Basically, Swordmasters are kind of like your Bard from FFT, constantly supporting everybody around them. They're not necessarily, again, going to be the sexiest unit on the team, but they're going to be fairly useful at keeping everybody supported for the most part. They do have a lot of weaknesses, but still, you know, in terms of a big AoE heal that you can use consistently, they're pretty handy. Okay, so now we see our zombie is almost all the way back to life, so we'll go ahead and call back our healer here, go for a bit of a major heal. We see that these guys are suffering a little bit, so we'll go ahead and cure them up. That griffin's looking a little bit worse for wear. It's worth keeping Blood Siphon in mind as something to potentially allow them to heal themselves on the fly. Once again, we're going to use finishers to abuse weird angles to make sure that we can kind of push our way forward here. And we'll now hopefully be able to start proceeding down the center here. So we can start doing more damage to this guy. We might have a shot on this one. We currently are blocked line of sight wise, so once again we're just going to push down on this knight here. Unfortunately, looks like most of their front line has worked out their timing pretty well, so they should be able to plug in that gap, but we're slowly surrounding and wearing them down. We've basically gotten them surrounded. We've got pressure coming in from all directions. The Griffin is frightened, but this is fine. This is, again, another great thing when it comes to flying units, that you can use them to essentially take some of those scarier hits. Like, for example, the Fearful Impact. They're usually going to be a priority in that situation. Anyway, a fun note is that when it comes to stuff like your AoE moves, while generally Frighten removes a lot of your damage, it doesn't really do very much for landing your debuff odds. So in this particular case, he's going to go ahead and drop that right there, and there still would have been more or less the same odds to actually land that stun. He was just basically kind of going for an attack while he was running away. Alright. So, now the Swordmaster is currently out of juice, so he will continue standing still. I probably could have gone and removed that fear right there, but oh well. Okay, so now this archer is fairly weak, but we don't have an elemental weakness to exploit. Ranged weapons, again, wants to exploit weaknesses. So currently she must have a shield or some kind of other armor that's able to catch this arrow. It looks like realistically it's probably just the better Baldr gear in general, as well as his lack of skill that's causing him to do no damage versus her. Whereas the other unit that's equipped more or less the same way would be taking a 30, but either way, it doesn't look like that's going to be the ideal for him. So he's going to go ahead and just kind of sit still for the moment, sit tight until his stun ends up coming back. We probably could have moved him into a better position, but oh well. Okay, so now the momentum is shifting more in our favor once again. We see that he's got an opening potentially to go attack that knight again, and we don't want that knight blocking things. Additionally, we also want to see this guy out of the way. And while we could focus on a heal at this point, we've done enough damage to their team that it's worth considering just straight charging forward. We have weakened them enough that it's worth considering just breaking through entirely and dedicating everything towards that. Knowing when to time your kind of push through is going to be a pretty important thing to learn as time goes on. But basically you want to always try to be paying attention to kind of how much you can bully the party, so to speak. So like right here, we have them surrounded on almost every front here. Like we have a situation where we're able to potentially even get this guy up and, you know, recruiting somebody here. So we've more or less got complete control over this situation. So it's definitely a good time to start considering, now that this guy is back in business, to just kind of push forward and attempt to kind of sow chaos and kind of approach from all sides at once. Okay, so currently looks like we're going to be waiting one more turn for that recruit to trigger. We're going to go ahead and go for this skill card over here because I want to get another Aqua Veil. So we're going to go ahead and move here, see if he's got any availability to throw another rock. It's not going to do very much, but it's still pretty handy. So we'll go ahead and throw him right there. We'll additionally move this knight forward in order to make sure that this knight right in the front is unable to be pushed back, because if you have somebody behind you, you'll take additional damage instead of going backwards. And additionally, we'll go ahead and see if, okay, we're unlikely to hit anything with this finisher. That's perfectly fine. We'll instead move over here and attempt to heal up this Griffin because he's looking a little bit worse for wear. Okay, so at this point, even if we end up taking some knockouts, we are still looking at a situation where we're more than likely going to finish without any proper casualties, even if some people end up going down. Alright, so next thing to consider sometimes, but not always. If you have access to Berserk, it basically has a ranged forgiveness of about 10 tiles or so, I believe, meaning that if you were to target this guy for almost no damage, he might be able to almost finish off this guy. Not really worth it in this scenario, but I'm just letting you know that it is a thing that you can do to target people at weird angles. Additionally, if we continue pushing on this way, we'll continue hammering on this guy. They've got a definite weakness in terms of their healing right here, but not every map will function like this. There's going to be a lot of cases where you really want to consider how much healing the team has. Sometimes, if their healing is going to be enough to not be distracted as easily, what you really want to consider is hunting down the healers and isolating everybody else. Bear in mind, zone of control is going to matter quite a decent bit, and the AI is aware of a lot of these tricks, even if they are not terribly obvious about it in a lot of cases. Like right here, you noticed that that guy was attacking the knight from the side. In a lot of cases, they will attempt to knock units off of ledges if they can, so just kind of bear that in mind. Alright. So they'll go for that heal there. That's actually a nice little tricky move. But again, we're just about to break through their front line. They've decided to, for whatever reason, send that one down there. It's a little bit of an odd choice, but whatever. You do you, I suppose, but they can do 142 versus that guy, or we can actually do some pretty solid numbers up here versus this squad up here. Reason being that he is a Fire Griffin. Again, despite a lot of their moves being classed as air, it is worth considering that you're only getting 10% bonus for using using the same affinity type attack, but if you were to go for something that the enemy team is weak against, you're going to be massively increasing the numbers that you're throwing out there. Alright, so now he looks like we've got both Aqua Veil and we've got that Poison Rain available, so we're actually going to go for that Poison Rain once again. This time we're going to be probably sacrificing the Griffin here. We're going to be doing... no, actually the Griffin's going to survive it. We're going to take him out, we're going to hopefully take him out, and we're going to do damage to her as well. So we're going to do a little bit of self-damage, but it's going to be worthwhile, just because it's going to allow us to crack through their front line there. As soon as our Lady Knight up front is able to move, we'll be able to make some gains here, because we don't want to sit tight anymore. We are looking at a position where we're starting to lose ground a little bit when it comes to our health. We don't, like, as soon as you start approaching a bit closer, you start noticing those situations where your health is going to become lower and lower and lower. They're going to start stacking up some of those different damage numbers. So you want to start pushing around that line just for the purpose of damage mitigation, if nothing else. Now, in her case, I forgot to equip a recruit, so we'll just go ahead and hammer this guy down and proceed to go and develop that into a Fizz Up card over here. That's nice and good. So now we've completely won this. At this point, there's no coming back for them. They no longer have a defensive line left. They no longer have anything to keep their squishies protected. And their leader is pretty much nice and exposed right there. We did sacrifice a couple units to do that final breakthrough, but again, these are the kinds of sacrifices that you can make sometimes. Additionally, again, if Berserk had triggered, just to show this, this would be an almost kill right there. But again, just something to bear in mind, that those are situations that you can exploit for those weird attack angles on something like Berserk. Okay, so now this guy's completely open, we'll go ahead and finish him off, and that will be that, pretty much. If we want to, we can go ahead and start moving forward to attack some of these other units, maybe get a bit of a recruit going, but for the time being, we'll just go ahead and attack this guy. See if we can make some friends along the way for free equipment and free units. Again, to each their own, you know, use whatever you prefer. Abuse whatever you prefer. Everything can be good. It's just a matter of kind of respecting what you're looking for, so to speak. Alright, so we got 23% chance. See if she wants to go ahead and join. She didn't want to join. Well, that's just too bad, I suppose. Anyway, down to 1 health. That was a bit of a low roll. Oh well. Alright. Something to also consider, by the way, is that while many units are resistant to all kinds of different debuffs, almost nothing can actually resist something like stun. So if you have a boss that is a particular threat, something like stun, false strike, and breach are always going to be important to have on hand. They come from a number of sources: stun from paralytic wave, from stunning arrows, from some pieces of equipment, like iron fans are going to be your earliest access to a stun hitting piece of equipment aside from the short bow. Tremendous shot on a short bow on an archer is going to guarantee stun on hit as well. Something like false strike is available from an upgraded rapier, as well as just an item that you can get from the store. Same thing with breach, although you can also get breach on a, like I mentioned earlier, a Zweihander or a claymore. So more things to just kind of consider. Additionally, when it comes to bleed out timers and things, it's always going to use the maximum count of that unit's recovery time. Like you saw right there, he's trying to fight back, but he can't because he's currently stunned. When it comes to recovery time on different units, generally speaking, something like fairies or griffins, it is worth worrying about when they get knocked out. But if you ever have a knight get knocked down, realistically speaking, it's going to be like 4 or 5 rounds for everybody else before that knight actually has a chance to do anything, because their maximum recovery time is very, very high. Whereas, you know, for some others it might be a little bit different. But again, we're just going to set up a few more potential recruit opportunities here if we want. We'll continue bullying this guy right here, just kind of hammering him down where we can. We're not going to rush him down entirely, because that might potentially cause us to lose a few more units than we might potentially want. But, you know, we're just going to kind of focus on it and see where it gets us. Looks like right here we might be able to get another free archer, so we might as well go for that recruit while we have time. Again, just if you see recruits, they will be already ranked up. They will be available, and it will essentially be the equivalent of just killing them off, while also giving you a unit plus all of their equipment for the future. So, you know, if they won't join, they won't join. If they do join, you know, you suddenly saved yourself the effort of making another unit. And especially in the case of something like archers, it's worth keeping a kind of rainbow of archers on hand, and you don't have to train any additional units if you happen to be in a position where you've already got them on hand. So, you know, you recruit them from one fight, use them right there in the next one. Alright, so we'll go ahead and do that. A nice little 500 damage coming off of Ninja Folkert over there, the Golden Ninja. Honestly, the only reason I did that is because it reminds me of some 80s movie I can't even remember the name of, where there was like some weird shiny golden ninja, but oh well. Just so you know, the only real benefit that uniques are getting aside from stats are going to be that recovery time bonus, which can be pretty handy in the case of you know, a class that's already fairly fast, so it's worth considering using them for some of your quicker classes. For some of your heavies, honestly, pretty much anybody's going to do that job just fine, so don't need to get too fancy with it. Anyway, let's see, we got a Tremendous. They don't have access to double yet, but this should go ahead and do a nice meaty number versus this wizard over here. Don't have access to an Instill on her, but we're very close to wrapping it up. But this is hopefully a good little crash course in terms of how you should be sort of speed chessing these different scenarios, how you can sort of completely control a map, and kind of the stuff that you should hopefully be paying attention to in order to get the most out of your units. Again, there's really no need to optimize that hard. And honestly, the best optimization I can say, as I've said before, is just keep on recruiting whenever you can. It's really just worth it to try to get as many people on your team as possible. True, some of them will fall off. Some of them will just stop being useful because you haven't used them for a while, but hell, it's another option that's in your arsenal, you know? And again, sometimes you just have weird angles, like some of your projectiles will fire kind of strange, like right there, the bubble flies in a sort of arc. You've got some of them that'll fly more directly, you have some of them that technically fly from one tile above where you are at any given time. It's worth testing things and not just assuming that you know. Anyway, so that'll be that. Hopefully this was a helpful crash course. Oh, and actually one thing I failed to show in this one but made a video on earlier, if you happen to be in a position where you want to, for example, access an area sooner, you can always use your monster units to try to climb up to those areas. You can use them as stepping stones, and additionally, you can get some pretty ridiculous jump height on something like, let's say, a ninja and a griffin, both equipping cloud rings. Anyway, so we had to give these guys some stupid names, so I'm gonna get on that. Y'all take care. I'll see you later.